guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. If I'm looking a bit dishevelled today, it's because I have COVID, which is great, love it, not bad for me. Like 2.5 years of not going out anywhere other than to the supermarket. My husband brought it back home from his manager who came into the office with COVID. Love it. Anyway, today I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freak out tag, something like that. I don't think anybody knows what it's actually called, but yeah, we're doing that because reading books and having meltdowns are the two key facets of my personality, so it seems like the perfect tag for me. The first question is the best book you've read this year, and I had quite a hard time with this question because I haven't really read like that many like amazing books this year, which makes me kind of sad because I've read more books this year so far than like I've ever read, but they've all been not bad, but just like sort of a bit forgettable. I think I'd probably go for Bolla by Pajtim. Statovci. I think I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it because there was like conflicting information online about it. I'll talk more about that in another question. Or The Pale Palace by Miranda, Cowley. I think that is the right author. This is a really, I'd say like a real summery, like beachy poolside kind of read, but really well written. The debut novel from a woman who is quite a bit older. I think she's in her 50s and she has a background in film, I think, like screenplays, that kind of thing, and you can really see that in the way she writes. It's about a woman who I can't remember the name of, she's been married, like quite happily married to this guy for a number of years. They have children together, but she sleeps with her childhood best friend, and they're all at a holiday home together in oh god, what's it called, Cape Cod. They're all in Cape Cod together, and they end up sleeping together just like yards away from where her husband is and her mother is and her kids are sleeping, and it's all about her sort of trying to come to terms with that and deciding whether to stay with this man that she really loves or whether to leave him and the life they've built together and try with Jonas, her childhood best friend, who is one of those like right person wrong time kind of relationships, and it sort of traces her life from when she was born right up to the present day. And yeah, it was really good. I enjoyed that a lot. That's the one I'd probably go for as my favourite. I don't think it's necessarily the best one that I've read, but I think in terms of enjoyment, that one probably, I would say. The next question is the best sequel you've read, and that's going to be quite a short answer for me. I've only read one sequel, and that was The Devil's Pawn by Oliver Pötzsch. This is a German novel. It is translated into English as well, and it's a sequel to The Master's Apprentice, which I read for the first time last year and loved. They're both two books that are very out of my comfort zone. They're historical fiction, following Dr. Faustus, the famous legendary figure in mostly German but like kind of like Central European folklore, and yeah, really like them. They're like something I wouldn't normally read at all. I'd say they're very light fantasy, like a whisper of fantasy. I'm not a big fantasy reader, but I appreciated that aspect of it, and yeah, I just really fell in love with the characters. It's just the tale of Dr. Faustus at sea. I don't know if you like know, it's quite a famous plot, but Dr. Faustus makes a deal with the devil in exchange for like superior knowledge, essentially, and yeah, it's just following him and his escapades around Europe, and this sequel follows him with a different band of people that he's travelling with, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I'm not going to go too far into it because if you haven't read the first one, you don't want to hear me chat about the second one, but yeah, The Devil's Pawn. The third question is, so it's on my laptop, a new release you've read you haven't read this year that you're excited to read. I'd say Paradais by Fernanda Melchor. Loved Hurricane Season, it's one of my favourite books of all time, but I haven't got around to that one yet. And also Lapvona, I think that's what it is, of the new Moshfegh book, obviously, because I want to read that. That article that was written about comparing it to Shrek just killed me off. I thought it was hilarious and made me want to read it even more. Question 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of 2022, and I don't really follow new releases all that much, just because I have a huge backlist of books I want to read and I tend not to buy that many new books. Just said I don't have the money for a start, and I don't have the space for lots of books, so I tend to read on Scribd or do my library's ebook app. So I'm not huge on the new releases. Two that sort of spring to mind are the new Elaine Castillo, which is an essay collection. I think it's called How to Read Now, all about the ethics of reading from what I understand of it, which sounds really interesting. And also a bit of a wild card, Babel by R.F. Kuang, which isn't my kind of thing at all. It's dark academia fantasy, which normally I'd just be like, no, not for me. But it's all about translation and the power of translation and the power of words, which kind of sold me. I saw Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction read it in one of her blogs, and I was just like, that sounds amazing, I've got to read that. So I have pre-ordered that, and I don't normally pre-order books, so that'll be good. Question 5 is your biggest disappointment of the year, and I'm sorry to say it's The Premonitions Bureau by Sunlight. I was so excited about this book, and it started off really interesting, but it just was really dry to me personally, and I wasn't particularly interested to engage. It's really well written. It's about, it's following quite a few people who intersect, their lives intersect, but mostly it's about this one man who sets up the Premonitions Bureau, following the Aberfan disaster in Wales, which was a mining disaster that killed loads of people, particularly lots of children in school, and it follows him setting up this bureau off the back of a lot of people having a premonition that this disaster was going to occur, and just looking into the psychology of premonitions and that kind of thing. Yeah, I was really interested because I used to, when I was a child, this is like just pure coincidence, I'm not saying I had premonitions, but I used to dream of plane crashes, and then I'd wake up and there'd be a plane crash on the news. It was really weird, and it used to kind of scare me when I was a kid, but yeah, I was really interested just from that perspective as well. But yeah, I just unfortunately found it a bit dull and dry, and that's not to say that it is boring, it just wasn't interesting to me particularly. I gave it 3 stars, I didn't hate it. I am glad I read it, but I just thought it would be something different to what it was, and that's on me. But I think I would still recommend it. I recommended it to my husband because I think he'd enjoy it, but it was just a bit too heavy on the psychology aspect, and that's just personally something I'm not that into. And the next question is your biggest surprise this year, and I'm going to say Freedom by Jonathan Franzen. Franzen's one of those authors that I always thought I wouldn't like because he's just very like typical middle class white man with typical middle class white man opinions, sort of like, I don't know, he's had a few bad takes about environmental issues, and it's kind of put me off, but I had to read Freedom as part of one of my modules at uni. It's a massive book, like 500 plus pages, and I was really dreading reading it because I didn't think I'd like it, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't think I would go out and read another Franzen in a hurry. I wouldn't be against the idea of reading one, but I'm not gonna bump this straight white dude to the top of my massive TBR pile. But basically Freedom follows the lives of a couple called Walter and Patty who live, I guess, is it Middle America? Anyway, like this suburban life, sort of like the early gentrifiers, and it follows like their lives as they meet each other, and prior to meeting each other, their lives to becoming this middle class couple. It's very much a slice of life kind of novel. There is some plot to it and things do happen, but it's mostly just a commentary on middle class American life. It's one of those, you know, like grey American novels. But yeah, I did really enjoy it, and I really cared for the characters of Walter and Patty, even though I kind of hated both of them. And it did raise some quite interesting points about gentrification and environmental issues, which is why I was kind of surprised to read that Franzen's a bit like has some kind of just like nonsensical opinions on climate change and actions we can take to prevent it. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. Like I said, I probably wouldn't read another Franzen, but I thought I would hate it, and I liked it. So the next question is your new favourite author, and I found this a bit hard to answer because I tend not to have favourite authors if I haven't read quite a few of their books, and the only authors that I've read this year that I've read in previous years are Sally Rooney and Nikki French, and both I would already consider favourite authors. So I think I will go with Jared McGuinness. He wrote The Coward, which is a really brilliant auto-fictional piece about a man also called Jared McGuinness, who gets into a car accident and becomes a wheelchair user. So he's disabled in later life as opposed to being born disabled, just like the author. You're never really sure which bits are fully fiction and which parts are like taken from his actual life. He just says that he uses his experiences as somebody who has become a disabled person to influence how he writes the story, and I just thought it was brilliant. The story, I really liked the character of Jared, even though he's quite corrosive and really rubs people up the wrong way. I just really liked his humour. He's so acerbic and observant, and it makes a really good commentary on how society treats disabled people and how he is treated differently once he becomes disabled, and I really liked that. There's like, he comes up with all these like brilliant responses when people say, oh, like, what's wrong with you, and they'll say things like, oh, it's the AIDS, and then people just recoil in horror. And just the way he deals with people who are just like overstepping boundaries without a second thought is just really good. But the reason I picked Jared as an author is because just the way it was written just made me want to learn so much more about this guy, and went and sought out interviews with him. And I don't normally do that when I read a book. I'd normally just read it and then like move on. I don't normally seek out interviews or anything like that, but I did that, and I followed him on Twitter, and I think he's brilliant, so I'm really keen to see what else he puts out, because I think The Coward was his debut. I don't know of any other of his works, but yeah, I hope he writes something again soon, because I'd be really keen to read like anything that he puts out. The next question is your newest fictional crush, and I don't really have fictional crushes. I'd probably say Faust from The Devil's Pawn. He's kind of a gross old man, but I don't know, there's something about him, and I think that just pretty much tells you everything you need to know about my taste in men. Then we've got your newest favourite character, and for this one I'm probably gonna say the sister from Sorrow and Bliss. I think she's called Ingrid. I think she's brilliant, a really underrated character, and I kind of wish the story had been about her rather than about what was her name? I've forgotten her name. I keep wanting to say Maud. I know it's not Maud, but it sounds quite similar. Martha. Yeah, I really wanted to read from Ingrid's perspective. I thought she was a brilliant character, and yeah, I loved her. So the next question is a book that made you cry, and even though I'm a big crier in life in general, I don't really cry at books that much. I'd say the book that left me the most devoid of hope, I guess, was Bolla by Pajtim Statovci. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong, so I do apologise, but yeah, that was just brutal. It's basically, it gets compared to Call Me By Your Name a lot, which I think is really inappropriate, and I'm not going to get into that here, but it's basically a couple who, it's Arsim and Milosh, who meet in Kosovo at the start of the outbreak of the Kosovan War. Arsim is Albanian and he is married and soon to be a father, and Milosh is Serbian and he is a medical student, and they meet in a cafe and kind of start this like very immediate, very passionate but very brief love affair, which is interrupted by the outbreak of war. Arsim flees with his family because he is Albanian and he's being persecuted by the Serbs. Milosh decides to stay behind and ends up fighting on the front line for the Serbian army. So you get this dual perspective. Arsim's is very linear from his life as a refugee. He's obviously very traumatised from what has happened to him, but his trauma is very different to Milosh, who is fighting and seeing some awful things and also like just inflicting these awful atrocities on other people. I think you can really tell that in the way that each narrative is told, because Arsim's is very linear and just in a very traditional prose style, whereas Milosh is more chaotic. It's told in letters and notes and it often doesn't make sense. I think that really speaks to sort of the way these two men have experienced the war, with Arsim having sort of some semblance of normality despite being in a new country, like he's now safe, and Milosh is fighting, albeit for the side of the oppressor, but he's still experiencing like intense trauma and horror. So I think the way they were narrated was really interesting. I think it really came alive on the page, like you could really feel the emotions of these two men. You could feel how in love they were with each other. You could feel how scared they were, how much they were grieving for each other, but also it doesn't depict them as just like innocent victims of war. They both become really embroiled in, and like almost well, Milosh is definitely complicit because he's fighting for the Serbian army, but Arsim as well, like he is an awful character. He treats his wife appallingly. He's physically and verbally abusive towards her. He's abusive towards his children, and he's just horrible to basically everyone. He's horrible to Milosh as well. But you really feel for them and you really feel their pain. I thought it was brilliant. Like I said, it's completely devoid of hope. The narrative is interspersed with this mythical tale of the Bolla from Albanian myth, and that's kind of a metaphor for the hope that one day these two men will meet again and reconcile, even though like you as a reader know you're not going to get a happy ending, and you don't. It's one of the most brutal endings in a book that I've ever read. But yeah, I just thought it was brilliant, and I really want to read more of his work. He also wrote Crossing, which came out a few years ago, and My Cat Yugoslavia, which is really famous. Yeah, I'd be definitely interested in reading those two. But yeah, it was an experience reading that book, but ultimately I really loved it. And in contrast to that, we have a book that made you happy, and I don't read books that are happy mostly. I just don't. I think I'll say The Devil's Pawn again, because you know there are sort of like tender moments and like more upsetting moments. Just being back in that world just made me so happy. I feel when I read those, felt like the first time I read Harry Potter, I felt like that, you know, before like I realised that J.K. Rowling's one of the worst people in the world. But yeah, it just like felt so warm and cozy. So I will say The Devil's Pawn again. I feel like I've just talked loads about that, which is weird because it's like not a book that I would normally read at all, but it just really had an impact on me. Then we have the most beautiful book you have received or bought this year, and I received two really beautiful books for my birthday. One from my friend, who is outside of my husband pretty much the only person that would buy me a book. I haven't read the book yet. I really trust her opinion though, and my husband bought me one, which is like a Greek myth collection. I will insert a cutaway of both of them because I foolishly didn't bring them upstairs with me to film this video. And the final question is, what do you need to read by the end of the year? And the answer is not really that much. I don't have any uni reading to do this year, which is a relief. I have a couple of NetGalley arcs, but like I don't really want to talk too much about those before I've read them. So I'd say the only ones that I would like to finish, I don't need to finish anything, right? But the ones I'd like to finish are ones I've already started. I've got one here, this extremely large bad boy, which is The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk, translated by Jennifer Croft from Polish. I'm not very far through this book. It's huge, like the biggest book I've ever read in my life, and I'm really enjoying that one so far. I don't really know what it's about so far because I'm not very far through, but it's beautifully written and I'm really excited to pick it up some more. It's just because it's so big, that's the reason I haven't read it more, because it's just difficult to read it. What else am I reading? Still reading 50 Sounds by Polly Barton, which I started last year. I would like to finish that, but that is super big brain energy and I do not have a super big brain right now. And also I'm reading Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Devon Price, which is kind of a self-help book. I guess you'd call it a self-help book, basically on why laziness doesn't exist and how it's a myth perpetuated by capitalism, which is an eye-opener to me. Yeah, I will do a review on that when I finished it because I think it's a really important book and it raises some really interesting points. But I think, yeah, they're the only books that I'm reading at the moment that I'm in the middle of. And if, like I said, if I can't read them, then like they just get carried over to next year. It's not a big deal to me if I don't finish books in the same year that I started them. So that's all the questions on the mid-year book freak out tag of sorts. Please let me know if you've done the tag. Leave me a comment with a link to your video and I will watch it, or just answer the questions in the comments if you want to let me know what your favourite and most disappointing books were of the year. I'd love to hear it. Thank you very much for watching and I'll see you again soon.